Today, my guest is someone who is going to tell you all the secrets for holistic wellness for the mind, for the body, for the soul. I'm so honored to have the beautiful and the fierce Amafah Mubashir.
For me, a big turning point was when I had gotten divorced, but I have to say it was probably the best year of my life as well. One day I just decided that, you know what, it's just not worth it to stay miserable. I love being in love.
How many years have you been practicing yoga for?
So next year, it's going to be my 10-year anniversary. Car stops and everyone's like, oh, is everything okay? And inside I'm like, reading headlines in my head, yogi kills 15.
Really, really exclusive. We got her first, guys.
He just turned to me one day because he saw me doing something and he was just like, do you think you live in a sitcom? I was scared of failure.
The biggest point in your legacy to this point?
Biggest point in my legacy? Oh, damn.
Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone to this week's episode of Really Real with Elise. As a society, we are pretty aware that we have to take care of our mind and body, but what about our soul? Well, you don't have to worry because today my guest is someone who is going to tell you all the secrets for holistic wellness for the mind, for the body, for the soul. I'm so honored to have the beautiful and the fierce Amafah Mubashir. Hello, Amafah.
What an intro. Wow. I'm feeling a little...
So I tell all my guests that I have these little notes I do, but I don't really follow them. And I just go with what comes out of the heart.
Okay. Is that what came out of the heart?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. Fierce and a lot of other good things, but we'll get right into it. So guys, Amafah actually, I don't need too much of an intro. A lot of people already know you. But Amafah has started Amafah's Asanas. She is a yoga instructor. She organizes amazing retreats. She is a model and influencer and Reiki practitioner and sound bowl therapist. Am I on point?
Yes.
Okay. Amafah, today, you are the healer. People come to you when they just want to feel better. They want to grow. They want to fix things. But growing up, who was your healer? What was your childhood like?
Oh, well, that's a interesting one. I think for me, I've always been a bit of an introvert. I actually had to work on not being an introvert growing up. But I think when I was younger, the most healing part of my day for me was digging my nose into a book. I was a big reader as a kid. I liked being in my room. I liked writing and reading and doing stuff like coming out of my imagination. And I was always a bit of that kind of kid wearing rose-colored glasses. And I feel like a lot of that child I've disconnected from, not in a bad or good way. It's just that I don't find myself reading as much as I would have as when I was a kid. I'm still as much a romantic though. Still see everything with rose-colored glasses. So that part of me is still intact. So I think for me, the biggest healer for me were the characters in my stories that I read about. I was always fascinated with fairy tales and Harry Potter and all of those magical things.
So when you grew up, were things as rosy when it came to maybe studying, picking a career, transitioning into the real part of life? What were those rosy-eyed glasses like?
I think that's who I am as a person. Everything is romanticized for me. Everything is like I'm in my own book right now. So I think when my husband and I had initially met each other, he just turned to me one day because he saw me doing something and he was like, do you think you live in a sitcom? I was like, no, why? And he was just like, because you sing to yourself in the mornings and then
that's just naturally who you were as a child.
That's who I've always been. I like doing that stuff. I like making the mundane parts of life romantic and interesting and magical.
And you see that as a good thing?
Yeah, I do. I think that really gives me contentment in life.
Any downsides to having a romanticized view on what life is?
Of course, I think it makes you very trusting. You end up putting yourself in vulnerable situations or getting hurt. But I feel like that's also part of the magic then, and part of the human experience.
Getting hurt is something people understandably shy away from talking about it. We talk about achievements, we talk about success, we talk about the highs. But the lows are something, even if we want to share about it, our vocabulary is a little limited. So we were speaking about your childhood, but when we talk about growing up, when do you think there was a point where you felt the most hurt?
I think there have been many parts of and as anybody else over here, you or anybody else in this room, we've all shared the human experience of loving or being loved or being hurt or hurting or crying or losing someone. All of us have shared those things in life, and as have I. I think there have been many parts. I feel like for me, a big turning point was when I had gotten divorced. It was when I was very, very vulnerable in the world out there. But I have to say it was probably the best year of my life as well. I think I got divorced at 29, so in 2019. And it's my favorite year of my life so far. Yeah.
And again, this is something that people have a very personal take on. Like with grief, with loss, divorce is something that everyone's experienced. There's no right or wrong. The shade of gray is personal. How did you decide that? And is that something that it took you time to decide that, okay, this marriage has to end? Or it was something that there was a moment where you said, I need to make a change here?
Yeah, so definitely the shades of gray and everything. I think for me, I had gotten married the first time when I was quite young. I didn't feel like I was young then. Nobody made me feel like I was quite young then. I think everybody was actually like, oh, you're late, because I feel like in our society.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 25. So I got engaged at 23 and I got married at 25.
Speaking conventionally from Pakistani standards, getting married at 25 is not early.
Yes.
So people were right to say,
exactly.
Train to nahi nikal rahi.
Exactly. Yeah. So everybody was like, oh, you're late. What's going on? Why aren't you getting married already?
Yeah.
And I felt a lot of pressure on me to be married at that point.
Yeah.
But now that I look back at it, I mean, my younger sister just turned 25. I don't think she's ready to be in an adult marriage relationship right now. And I don't think anybody prepares you for what comes up with really real relationships.
Thank you, branding collaboration taken. But you know, one of my early episodes, we had Waheed from the Wedding Story Films, and he covers a lot of weddings. So we segued into girls and boys and girls. Why should we say boys and girls? Actually, no, girls and boys are okay also.
Or men and women.
Or men and women are very prepared for their weddings. Outfit, makeup, food, honeymoon, all of that. But just not so much for marriage.
Yeah.
So according to Amafah, what's the difference between a wedding and marriage?
Well, the wedding lasts one day, but then you've made a commitment to someone for the rest of your life after that, which means their highs and lows, and they have to accept your highs and lows. And in our society, we're not just accepting one another, we're accepting every extension of them, which means their families, their homes, everything that comes with who they are.
Their value systems.
Their lifestyle, everything. And for me, I think when I was getting married and when I had gotten married the first time, I thought my ex-husband was a wonderful person. And he is. I'm not saying he's not. It's just that we were so wrong for each other and we did not realize that then. Because I didn't understand the practicalities or the nuances of marriage and everything that comes with it. And I had a lot of learning to do. And I think so did he. And one day I just decided that, you know what, it's just not worth it to stay miserable. Why should we put each other through this for no reason at all? Mm. And I remember when I made the decision, everybody was just like, "What do you mean? Does he hit you?" And I was like, "No." "Is he cheating on you?" And I was like, "No." And then they're like, "So what's the problem?"
So that was the bare minimum
That's the bare minimum. And
of
I
a
was just
criteria
like,
for.
I think there's more to a marriage than just that. There's more um, reasons to be happy or unhappy than just somebody not beating you up or not cheating on you. I don't think that covers the basis of what a good marriage should be. Um, and just one day I was just like, you know what, I can't do it. I can't imagine the next 5, 10, 20, 50 years living like this, where I'm not happy, where I don't see my values aligning with this person's. And yeah, I just made that decision, and I did get a lot of pushback in the beginning.
That's what I was interested in, because I think it's so inspiring to see a girl know what are the parameters of happiness and one's value and what we can expect from life. So that's great. Okay, you had that in your inner self. But then how is the reaction, maybe the stigma, the response from everyone else?
So I think everyone at that point, I think people who love me were speaking from a place of fear and worry for me. It's not that they wanted what was the worst for me or what was not the best for me. It's just that in their head, they felt like me being married and miserable is a much better option than me being divorced and alone in a country like Pakistan. And I remember, like, everybody was just like, "But you're going to have that thappa on you. Ab to talaq
Label
shuda hai."
lag gaya.
हाँ, talaq shuda hai.
Kaisi ladki hogi?
Kaisi ladki hogi. And I felt like that was just the beginning of it for me. I was just like, okay, now I've done this. Now I can do anything. It was actually the most liberating experience to belong to myself at the age of 29 for the first time in my life. For the first time in my life, I didn't have, I didn't belong to a husband or my father. I just belonged to myself.
Your
And-
identity was not in relation to someone else. You
And
were enough.
Yes, especially to a man at that point. Because growing up, like, I grew up in a conventional Pakistani home, you know, somewhat strict parents, but also open liberal parents. And everything was like, I need permission for this. I need permission for this. And then I got married, and then I needed permission for things. And then suddenly at 29, I woke up one day and I was like, oh, I don't have to ask anyone before doing something.
And that's okay. And there needs to be no justification or explanation for being enough for yourself.
Yeah.
So when you ventured out in this world of being an independent Pakistani girl, I'm assuming you lived by yourself then?
So I actually moved in with my grandmother for a bit.
Okay.
Because COVID hit right after. And it was really nice because my grandmother lives on her own as well. I'm quite close to her. Get my love of wearing saris from her. And
The whole pleating.
yes.
Yeah.
So she doesn't know that I'm wearing a stitched sari.
That's a sin.
That's a
That's
sin.
a sin. We don't need her to. She can't watch this.
She can't watch this. But I moved in with her for a bit.
Okay.
But with the intention of getting my own place.
Okay. And did you?
Which I did.
And with your new place, did you get somewhat in a public setting? She's that kind of a girl jo akeli rehti hai.
Yeah, so
You know, fast girl.
fast girl.
Sorry,
So-
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to be candid कि
Yeah.
वो पाकिस्तान में अकेली रहती है तो पता नहीं वो क्या करती होगी.
Yeah. And I don't understand what people think we as women want to do when we want independence. All I wanted to do was paint in my home, watch whatever I wanted, cook for myself.
Water your plants.
Water my plants, sit
Yeah.
with my cat, paint the walls pink.
Yeah.
And it was just as simple as that.
Did you ever feel people came up to you and said it in your face, or it was a hush at the back?
I don't think any of my friends said it. If anything at all, I think people around me were very proud of me for being able to do that. Although obviously some of my friends were just like, "Aren't you scared of
Yeah.
being alone at night in your home? How do you sleep at night all alone?" And I was like, I'm okay. I'm great, actually. It's amazing to be able to go to my home and it smells like me. Every piece in there is curated to what I want it to
But
be.
at any point, were you scared
I was scared of failure.
Failure.
I was scared that
Failure of having made this decision.
failure of having made this decision and to regret it later or to be struggling in it later. Because it's not easy to run a home. But I mean, it's not that my house was big and lavish, but it was mine. And that's all that mattered to me. I wasn't out there to prove to anybody where, like, you know, that I have this or I don't have this. For me, it was just the fact that I was allowing myself to live the life that I wanted, and being able to do it for myself. That was enough for me.
It sounds so serene just hearing Amafah talk about her abode. At that point, you know, you might have been scared of failure, but at any point, had you given up on the concept of love or loving again?
Oh, never.
Never?
Never.
So that romantic was still alive.
Yes, for sure. I love being in love.
What do you love the most about being in love?
Just everything about it. Just the feeling, the elated feeling you get with being in love. In fact, I think I fall in love too easily.
Too easily?
Too easily.
So tell us about your husband. How did you meet him? What was that like?
So we've actually known each other since we were kids.
Okay.
We went to school together, and I've always been friends with his sisters, not him so much. And they had moved to the US for like a good decade. So then I just kind of lost touch. And then just in the past couple of years, I just started seeing him socially a lot more. And he would just always opt to drop me home. He'd be like, no, I'll drop you home. No, I'll drop you home. And then somebody one day, and then he would just be kind of around me at parties. And I'm also, by the way, for someone who loves being in love, I cannot take a hint. So I had...
Are you Cancerian?
Yes, I am. Cancer Leo.
Okay, wow,
Yeah.
you got lucky. Okay,
Yeah.
Cancer Leo is the more positive side. I'm just a Cancerian, but I also feel that sometimes not
Yeah.
being able to take a hint. But I'm the very more emotional side. Cancer
Yeah.
Leo have the leadership skills going on.
Oh, well, I feel like you've got some Leo in you as well. I can
Yeah?
see it.
Okay, my mom tells me I'm a little bit of a Capricorn and a Cancer.
Okay.
But that's her take.
Okay. And I remember one of my friends one day pointed out, because he was talking to someone around me, or he was talking to me, or I don't know what it was, but she just turned to me and she's like, you know, I think this guy's kind of into you. And I was like, who, Arham? No, it's just Arham. And she was like, no, I think you're not seeing it. And then like a few more people said it. And every time I just brush it off like, no, you're crazy. He's just known me all his life.
And you didn't see him like that at that time?
No, not at all. And one day he actually came up to me at a social gathering.
Okay.
He held my shoulders and he was like, I don't think you understand that I like you. And I was like, oh.
But isn't it nice
Yeah.
when we just let men be expressive and just
Yes.
say it as it is?
Yes, 100%.
And not expect that coyness from them?
100%.
And then what was your response?
I was shook.
Shook. Okay.
Shook. And I kind of, like, I don't even know if I should say this on camera, but I ghosted him for a while. Not ghosted him, but I think I just needed to get my head around how I felt about him.
Yeah.
And he was very persistent, and I'm glad that he was, because I think he is the most amazing person. He's the kind of, like, being with him makes me question how I ever settled for anything less than this, which is the best
Wow.
feeling.
And it's moments like this or people like this that I think is so inspiring for girls watching, that set your bar high.
Yeah,
There are really
straight
good
up.
people out there.
There are, and don't settle for less.
And wait, because
And-
there's so
yeah.
many things that, you know, when Amafah, your education, you know, when I was looking, you've studied actually graphic designing from Indus Valley.
Mhm.
People would assume you'd go into marketing, but you have a career, thriving career in yoga, extensively in holistic wellness. So do you think now that you look back, if you were to, and like, alhamdulillah, in a happy marriage, found the perfect person, you're doing all the checklists that a Pakistani girl
Mhm.
must have. But do you think if you look back to Amafah in her 20s, you would tell herself to just keep going? Or you would tell her to do some things differently?
No, I feel like she did good. I'm
She
proud
did
of her. I'm proud of her and whatever she did. And it was definitely not the easiest path to choose.
Yeah.
I remember somebody had told me initially, the day I was quitting my advertising job, I used to work in advertising,
How long did you work in advertising for?
about 2.5, 3 years.
Okay.
Right after I graduated, I jumped into advertising. And I remember someone told me that day that, you're quitting your job for this career that you have no idea will work out or not. Are you sure you want to do this, firstly?
Yeah.
Secondly, remember that you are giving up on a salary, and a salary is one of the hardest things to give up in life, because when you're entering a freelancing path like yoga or whatever else you choose, you never know what your income's going to be like at the end of it, right?
And even if you know what it is, you won't know it'll stay the same every month.
Exactly. With a salary, you know that, you know what, I'm going to work this month, I'm going to get this at the end of this month. But with what I was doing then, I knew it was going to be not the easiest financial path.
And that's the price you have to pay.
Yeah.
But not just like the quantitative price, it's also the concept, right? Conceptually, marketing, advertising, solid careers, ladders out there, very clear career trajectory versus that of yoga. And again, back then, up now, it's still become quite an industry. There are new entrants in the market, their business models, their studios. But back then, did you ever feel that it's not even seen as a full-time career?
Oh, not at all.
Right?
In fact, when I was getting into it, and I've tried my fair share of hobbies turned into careers. I was a photographer at one time. I got into modeling for a bit. I used to be a VJ for a bit as well.
VJ, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a secret.
Okay, not anymore. Really, really exclusive.
But I think back then when I told my family, they were just like, okay, it's another one of her phases. She'll get out of it.
It's a cycle. Okay.
It's a cycle.
Yeah.
But for me, this is the one that stuck. This is the one where I was just like, I feel happy doing this. I like
and you want to
to
stick to it.
Yes.
How many years have you been practicing yoga for?
So next year, it's going to be my 10-year anniversary.
So this could be the pre-10-year celebration podcast. Yes. We got her first, guys. So, I've actually attended Amafah's classes, so has someone else from my team. And we were discussing that the image of yoga in Pakistan is that it's a feminine exercise. But in your classes, there is a very high number of men and men who you'd feel very comfortable doing yoga around with, regardless of certain poses.
Yeah.
How did you crack the code of breaking that gender barrier of the association of yoga with a woman?
I'm not quite sure how I did it. I think it happened very organically and naturally. I never discriminated on whether someone was a man or a woman, or neither when they entered the class. But I mean, I did try to always create a safe space for everyone. So even the men that come, I know that they would never make any woman over there feel any discomfort or feel like they're being looked upon in any way. And actually, a lot of men that come to my class have come in through their partners. So somebody has brought their husband with them. Somebody has brought their brother with them. Somebody told their son to get into it. And it's just become a community like that.
Breaking gender stereotypes.
Yeah. And honestly, I never thought it was a gendered thing anyway. But now that you point it out, I do see that, yes, it is a very female-centric.
Like strength training or kickboxing conventionally is seen as a more masculine exercise versus not air yoga, what is it called?
Aerial
yoga is seen a little more feminine.
Yeah.
Or ballet is seen certainly more feminine than, let's say, running on the track.
Yeah.
But you've broken that. And sometimes we do things and from the inside, we don't realize it. But when someone tells us, you're like, actually, I have. Another conception I've seen with yoga, it is associated generally within the realm of spirituality, possibly religion also. Have you ever felt that people who come to you think, oh, yoga hai, that's more like a Buddhist or a Hindu tradition? And
I think
it's un-Islamic.
So 10 years ago, definitely I had people who had said that.
Yeah.
But I think over time, the community has become so much more educated. There's so many more yoga studios and yogis and types of practices out there that people are more aware of what yoga can do for them. And so now it's become more about a physical practice as well for most
Hmm.
people. And whatever add-on comes with it spiritually is just an add-on.
And it's personal to the person.
It's personal to the person.
Any point in your yoga career when, and of course, you can completely say, no, that doesn't apply to me, but I just thought of it right now. You started about 10 years back.
Mhm.
Many new players in the market now, studios, the business of yoga is really gone up.
Mhm.
Did you ever feel that competition? Scared about the competition?
So you know what? Very early in my career, I remember I had started doing retreats, and very shortly after, somebody else was planning the same retreat that I had done. And I remember speaking to
And
my
they didn't copy you.
uh back then I felt like they did
Yeah.
because I was the one of the few people who was doing it then. And my mentor, who was actually the one who set up the whole retreat business for me, she said, you know what, don't worry. There's enough to go around for everyone. So there, always think of everything in abundance.
Abundance, yeah.
Abundance. So what is meant for you will be yours. People who come to me will come to me. And if they're not meant to come to me, they will go to someone else. But there is enough for everybody.
Mentors are important, you think?
100%.
Did we have them growing up?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I think even in the form of your big sister or your mom, those are all mentors.
Who was your mentor when it came to life, not career, life?
Life. You know, surprisingly, I think it has to be my little sister.
Little sister.
She's 8 years younger than me.
Oh, wow.
But I'd say she's the feistiest, bravest, realist person I know. And in a lot of ways, she kind of pushed me to be the best version of myself. Not because she said to do this or do that, but because every time I looked at her, I would want to be.
You learned by example.
Yes, I just, not by example, I wanted to be the best example for her. I wanted her to look at me and be like, yeah, I'm so happy this is my sister. Or I'm so proud of my sister. I want to be like my sister. So actually, she's the one who mentored me without even knowing it.
That's beautiful because usually we associate our elders with that. But someone younger, especially I think the younger generation, they're just doing things so differently and they're so authentically owning up to who they are. That's almost inspiring.
Yeah, 100%.
Talking about younger girls and boys and the youth, someone who, let's say, is in their early 20s and is choosing a career, and they think something unconventional like sports, fitness, or wellness is for them. What are your tips for them when it comes to choosing a major, choosing their first internship?
Well, firstly, I would tell them, and even for my 20-year-old self also, I think this is the piece of advice I would give initially, is to create an intention for yourself and what you want to receive from what you want to do, right? Like for me, yoga was never about being financially successful, for example. It was always about finding fulfillment through my practice or doing what I love doing without any other add-ons. So firstly, I tell them, create an intention. What do you want to truly receive from what you want to do? And then I would say just go out there and do it. Just Pakistan is a land of opportunity. There's so many gaps in the market right now, and we can fill those gaps.
And you probably feel that when you go for your retreats also. You see local business, you see tourism, the service sector.
Everything. Even 10 years ago, if I was anywhere else in the world, I would be a dime a dozen yogis. You know what I mean? Like I would be 1 in 100 studios that are anywhere down the road. Over here, I feel like I've created a name because there's a gap in the market.
And a niche.
And a niche. And I think there's still so much opportunity, so many other gaps in the market for people to fill. It is actually a land where your dreams can come true if you just kind of figure out what you have to do.
Another thing that I think we all know you're really good at is modeling, influencing, and you have a really, really authentic and very aesthetic Instagram. And you have worked and you do work with brands. What's something that you enjoy the most about being an influencer?
So, I don't actually think of myself as an influencer or a model at all. I think sometimes I do stuff for my friends, or, if a brand really strikes me as something that I want to be a part of, then I'll do it. But for the most part, I find I'm very awkward when it comes to modeling and like posing. I remember I did a Cardi campaign a couple of years ago, or maybe last year. I don't remember.
Yeah.
And in that, I was with two other models, and they had hired me saying that you just have to be yourself. So when I got there, I got in front of the camera and I was like, ee, and and the photographer was just like, "Aap apne dant andar kar le," which was rude.
Yeah.
But secondly, I was just like, I actually don't know how to pose any other
And they
way.
asked you to be yourself, and maybe not that I'm saying you are awkward, but everyone's natural face is just a certain way.
And I just can't take myself seriously when I'm doing the model face.
Yeah, the smize.
The
I tried to do it
smize.
outside for the outfit look. It didn't really work for me. But, have you ever had an experience working with a brand where you were like, wow, this looks so glamorous on Instagram, but this is so much harder than I thought?
In what way? Do you mean like the...
Working with brands, modeling, brand deals?
Well, I mean, yes, obviously. I mean, I did Her Beauty last year, which is a skincare brand, and they're doing really well. They've got some really good stuff, some really good products as well. And it was a 4-day shoot for a 10-second clip. And we would be there for 14 to 15 hours a day. And it was exhausting, but I think that's part and parcel of this work. I mean, we're shooting this podcast right now even, and people are going to see a portion of it, and it's a lot more work behind the scenes.
Oh, tell me about it. We're just completing the season, and the amount of work, energy, emotional intelligence or lack of that it takes, it's a lot. And it's very, very exhausting. But then that's, I guess, the thrill, that learning and that growth. We spoke a little bit about retreats, right? So, and you said you grew up in a standard Pakistani family, conservative, but taking permission. When you interact with girls from different age groups, different families, backgrounds, have you ever felt that they had to take permission to go with just girls who it's not their father or their husband, and you had to like convince a mom on the phone or a dad कि हम safe रहेंगे?
Sorry, just gonna. So when I had started out my retreats, like I said earlier, intention for me is everything.
Yeah.
And so when I had come up with the intentions for my retreats, it was to create a safe space for women to travel by themselves. One of the retreat ethoses was that.
Yeah.
So I did get a lot of women from all kinds of age groups, and actually it was the older women who would be traveling by themselves for the first time to the northern areas.
Did you ever get a chance to ask them why this was the first time?
A lot of them told me that they never got a chance, or they never felt like they had anybody to go with, or their husbands had been on like a boys' trip, or their husbands were not interested.
But these are relatively good reasons. What I actually thought would be, how growing up we say, I want to wear this, or I want to go there, and they'll say, हाँ husband ले जाएगा.
Yeah.
या जो करना है husband के साथ कर लेना.
Yeah.
And wo phir life just keeps going on and on. And first it's the father, then it's the husband, conventionally speaking. But you don't think this was the common concern in the women who were relatively older?
No, not the permission stuff. But yes, with younger women, I've definitely had that. I've had a couple of women actually who would have a hard time convincing their parents. And then suddenly their parents would be like, okay, you can go only if you go with Amafah. And it was
from
the best
Amafah the healer to Amafah the guardian.
Yes, I would be like, yes, I love that.
A lot of responsibility though.
It is.
Any moment from your retreat experience where you felt, what have I gotten myself into?
Oh, hundreds of...
What was the worst where you said, okay, I'm going back home and never doing this again?
So a few retreats ago, I remember we were driving it was during COVID, and flights got cancelled, and we were driving up to Hunza in a coaster. Now, as we were driving up, so okay, wait, actually, let me rewind. Rewind the story a little bit. We had to go to Skardu, and our flights got cancelled. So the group I gave them, I always have plan B, C, D
Yeah.
ready, right?
Yeah.
So when the Hunza flight got cancelled, I was like, okay, guys, the Skardu flight got cancelled. I was like, guys, okay, I have Swat ready, I have Natya Gali ready, I have this ready. And the group was like, no, we want to go see the cherry blossom, so we're going to go.
And that's in Skardu.
And that's in Skardu. And I was
Okay.
like, the road to Skardu is closed, so we can't go. They're like, okay, let's go to Hunza then. And I was like, guys, the drive is long, because the day before this retreat, I had just ended a retreat and driven down 22 hours. So I was like, guys, the road is at least 22 hours long, the road trip right now. And they were like, it's fine, we're in it. I was like, okay, we took a group consensus, they were all in it. We started driving up, and now it's maybe, I'd say 10 p.m. at night. We've been driving all day. We're going through the mountains. It's raining suddenly. There's flooded roads. And not a landslide, but a rock fall happens. And I see it happening in front of me. I'm sitting in the front of the coaster. People are asleep behind me. And
it must be dark, so you probably didn't have very good visibility.
It was dark. It was raining. All I could see were these rocks falling in front of us. And we are on the edge of a cliff, right? Like those
and the
windy
road must
roads.
be very narrow.
Yes. And so there's a drop on this side and a mountain on this side, and rocks falling in front of me. And I'm just looking, and they fall literally a second before we were supposed to pass it. And the car stops, and everyone's like, oh, is everything okay? And inside I'm like, reading headlines in my head, Yogi kills 15.
Amafah's Asanas from advertising to...
Yeah, and I'm just like, and somebody asked me, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, everything is fine.
Because you can't show it to them, can you? Because if you panic, then they'll all panic.
Of course. So I have to keep my cool no matter what.
But inside what's going on, only
I was dying. I was like, I'm never doing this again. And then I did it again.
And then?
We were fine.
You were fine.
We got to Hunza, the driver got off, he took the rocks out of the way, ran back in the car, drove us out of there. Exhausting journey, but we made it.
But that moment where you felt like, okay, this might be it. Did you have a flashback or a moment?
A flashback?
Or like a moment, you know how life just swings by, or what was that moment that, okay, this might be my last moment? What was that feeling like?
I wasn't ready for it to be my last moment. I think I was just like, I need to get these people to safety. It doesn't matter what happens to me right now. I just need to make sure nobody is hurt while they're with me.
Because you had that obligation on you.
That liability.
Wow. Again, a lot of people in retreats is something where you get a lot of aesthetic content from, a lot of really good experiences. So you won't really think that it could be that perilous or dangerous. So Amafah, you know, you have a great, great career already, and I can't wait for what you have more for. But out of everything that you've done, you know, starting a yoga practice, Reiki, sound bowl, retreats, and VJ, let's not forget, what has been the most precious memory or the biggest point in your legacy to this point?
Biggest point in my legacy? Oh, damn. Honestly, I think every day I am truly grateful and reminded of how wonderful a life I have created in terms of my career. I mean, I walk into my studio and it gives me an instant feeling of Alhamdulillah. You know, I see people come into my class. I see the community that's being created amongst them. I see how they feel during and after and before their practice.
Yeah.
And just seeing that brings me joy. I love how people feel when they attend a yoga class.
And it's very hard to make other people's feelings change.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, thoughts still, but feelings are very, very intimate. And for so many people's feelings to change. And I'm sure you have a great set of relationships with them, then they're so grateful to you.
I mean, I don't know if they're grateful to me, but I'm definitely grateful to them.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for them, to you, to Zara, who's here as well. Everyone who has been a part of that journey, each and every person. And now there's, alhamdulillah, thousands. But each of them, I am so grateful that they have allowed me this career.
I really like the way you shift perspective. It's not about you, it's about what others can do for you. Thank you so much,
Thank
Amafah, for your
you.
time.
Thank
I'm
you.
so grateful that so early on you were so candid, so brave, and so clear with what your journey's been like, what were
Thank you.
experiences. And I think the best thing that, our viewers, especially young girls watching, are really going to take away that what we're expected to do by a certain age is not just external, but that expectation will continuously stay there.
Mm-hmm.
That checklist of expectations of that balancing act.
100%.
And I think in Amafah, we have a really, really good relatable example and a role model of being authentic with who you are, trying different things over the course of life. And when you think you found the one, to wait for that 10-year mark and do that podcast celebration.
Yeah.
But thank you, Amafah.
Thank
I
you.
really, really had a very light, relatable, and inspiring chat. And do let us know in the comments below. We touched a lot on how women feel, whether it's safety, clothing, what activities we're supposed to do. If that's something you have felt, and what are some things you think other girls could be inspired by. See you next week. Take care and Allah Hafiz.